Satsang session on 24th November 1980, Mother's Teaching, talk number 65, continuing questions and answers 1951 of the Mother.
Good question. For the individual experience, what's the difference between manifestation, descent, and influence? Is it the same phenomenon in different intensities? No. Each is a different moment. Influence is an indirect action by some source of good or bad. Anything which projects itself on you in whatever way, may be in the form of thoughts, in the form of feelings, or in more subtle ways like will. It goes on acting all the time, and it has an effect which is not immediately seen but gradually seen in your makeup. This incessant, indirect action from something outside you is called influence. It may be a good influence, it can be a bad one. For instance, Sri Aurobindo had written that this was in 1933, 34, 35. There are two influences in the ashram to which a visitor is open when he arrives here. One is the influence of myself and the mother. The other is the influence of sadhaks. It depends upon the luck of the visitor to which he opens. So that is influence. Descent. Descent is, as the word shows, a flow, an ingression of something from above. A descent and ascent. There is always this context of direction. Descent is the downflow of something in you. It can be a descent of peace, a descent of light, a descent of power, descent of knowledge, descent of joy. Similarly, there can be a descent of the evil forces, their power, their consciousness, their working, it can descend. So descent is a downflow of something from above. Manifestation is a bringing out, something becoming apparent where it was not there before. So manifestation presumes that something is inherent, and that becomes explicit, perceptible, patent. What is latent becomes patent. So manifestation is the putting out of something from within. What was not there before is put out, and that is called manifestation. In a way, these three are steps. First, the influence, second, the descent, and third, the manifestation. One after another, usually this is the process.
Manifestation can be divine and non-divine both.
Naturally. Because these are impersonal movements. Action of an influence, descent of a force, manifestation. These are impersonal movements. What manifests, what descends, what influences? It depends upon that.
In case of descent, ascent must have taken place first.
Need not. Need not. In many, very rarely though, not in many, in some, the descent may take place first, and then you awake. It is an act of grace or of your previous evolution, something is waiting, the time has come, and it works. And thereafter you wake up. What have you been doing? You suddenly realize something is awake and you begin to aspire. But as things go normally, it is the ascent that invokes the descent. First the arohana, ascent, and then the avarohana, the descent. The descent is usually in response to the call from below, and the call itself is the ascent of aspiration. There is an important sentence in Mother's questions and answers, which, though this was told in 1951, somewhere in May or April, it received corroboration by her in the last years of her life, somewhere in the 70s, and that is, yoga in the midst of life is more complete. The question was whether yoga, like say ours, is to be done best in a cloistered community like our ashram, or a place isolated from the rest, and the other situation is that you are not circumstanced to come and stay in that community, but you have the aspiration, and you are told you convert your life itself into yoga. Mother says that yoga done in the midst of the challenges of life is more complete and more rounded, because, she says, in a protected environment, in a collectivity where you do not have to face pressures of life, challenges of temperaments, challenges of situations. Your progress is a fair weather progress. You have in the aviation what is called fair weather report, isn't it? Yes. Now, fair weather progress. If in a place like this, we still speak of tension, we still speak of problems, let us be honest to ourselves. They are man-made problems. They are not thrown by life circumstances. We create our problems and we occupy ourselves with them. Unlike problems which come up in life, you are staying in a city of Calcutta. Every 4 hours there is shutdown, isn't it? If you are staying on the 10th floor, finish, you have to walk up all the distance. Or if you are caught up in the middle in the elevator, you know what it is. Then you have to walk long distances. There are manholes without lights. Anywhere you can fall and break your head. Strikes, closure of schools, rationing of non-existent kerosene and exorbitant sugar. Now all these problems you have to face, none of which we have to face here. Now that is a challenge to your equanimity, to your patience, to your common sense, none of which is tried here. For us, some things were absolutely certain. Then if we worry, servant has not come, this thing has not happened, these are all minor things to which nobody pays attention outside. So there, faced with the challenges and the pressures of life, you are being beaten, as Sri Aurobindo described, by the hammer of God on the anvil of life. And all your dross falls away. And that is what Mother says ultimately. She said, it is my considered conclusion that the greatest progress is done under the greatest pressure. And I challenge anybody to prove to the contrary. She said this after observing for 50 years how the human consciousness reacts to different situations. She tried to build a small world, as she said, where you don't need to have any burden, any responsibilities, any worries. Everything material is arranged for you. You have only to aspire. You have only to establish your link with God. She said that people found alternate occupations. Instead of devoting all their energies, as she had anticipated, for the higher quest, they found alternate occupations. But outside you have no time. You are not given any scope for developing alternate occupations. So there is a constant pressure. That is why she says, yoga in the midst of life is more complete. And I myself have seen during my tours or stays outside that the necessity for vigilance is 100 times more outside than here. Here we can be relaxed. There is ultimately a protective atmosphere, umbrella, and things get adjusted. But you can't say that outside. You have to be vigilant. You have to be at your what mother calls the highest level of consciousness attained. If you have to face the situations, you can't afford to loosen your psychological nerves. So, when Sri Aurobindo says, turn life itself into yoga, don't make a distinction between yoga and life. Whatever you are doing, turn that into yoga. Mother, for instance, never appreciated anybody telling, I don't get time for yoga. I have got so much of office work, I have got so much of family work. She said, why? Why do you make that distinction? By turning your family work, your office routine, into part of yoga, those activities gain in their quality. And you make the right use of whatever assignments you have for development of your consciousness. So, you may say, if Ramakrishna brought religion to the door of the common man, Mother has brought yoga to the door of the common man. She has made it as simple, as straight, that it can be incorporated even among educational programs for children. No separate class provision need be made for teaching of yogic values, yogic attitudes in schools. It has to be integrated. If you say it is moral class, catechism, religious, there is controversy. But a yogic orientation, a yogic culture, nobody can object, even Russia can't object. Actually, they are imbibing. They are open to any kind of progress. Today I was reading a funny write-up of a long interview with Dhirendra Brahmachari in Delhi. So one of the things was so instructive. It seems he always has that thin muslin dress, that dhoti, and a cloth, nothing else. Very thin, transparent white. And even in minus 20 degrees temperature, he goes in that. 2 years ago, he amazed everyone in Russia, Moscow. He walked on the pavement with that dress. So all those people are amazed. And they took him to a hospital to measure the blood count, this count, that count, to see how much it differs really. By yoga, how much you can control. Is it just a power of will? Or is it a yogic capacity of adjustment? They took him there. Of course, he must have, permitted them to do that. That was amazing. How, by this yogic heat, I was reminded in Tibet, there is so much of cold, freezing temperatures, and part of their yoga, Tibetan yoga, is the first lessons are the novices are put through certain breathing techniques, concentration of consciousness in the body in particular areas, so that when you sit, the examinations are held. Say, once a year or once in 6 months, tests are held. So the candidates are made to sit on sheets of ice, without clothes, and the extent to which the surrounding ice melts as a result of the heat emanating from the body of this fellow, that decides how much marks he gets. The persons who have more capacity, who have trained themselves and got that power, they are given the higher rank. Not only the seat on which you are sitting, but the surrounding things, they must melt. I think the name of that thing is called tumors. Tumor, yes. Heat in the body. That is only by yoga. They don't need woolen clothes. And I have seen in America, many of these Tibetan lamas and things, they just one cloth here and one cloth here. They just walk about. We all put on woolen coats, woolen caps, mufflers, and cars are heated. But these people have got that capacity. For them it is a way of life. So yoga has many things to contribute to the full utilization of the resources of life. India has forgotten, but the others are unearthing these possible contributions of Indian yoga. And Sri Aurobindo, in his synthesis of yoga, has thrown so many sidelights on the implications of certain techniques. For instance, he explains, which nobody has done, the phenomenon of levitation. He points out that it is not rare, it is not a miracle. By certain modifications of breathing, by certain asanas, it is possible to make the weight of the physical body less, so that it escapes the operation of the law of gravity for the time being. So when the law of gravity doesn't operate, you just float. This scientific explanation, instead of saying it is a siddhi given by God, here is shown how you have to do it. And in the Hatha Yogic treatises, Hatha Yoga Pradipika and others, there are chapters devoted. How do you do that? If you want to remember your past births, if you want to remember future, where you have to concentrate during meditation, there is a particular spot in the body where if you concentrate, particular results ensue. So Patanjali, in his aphorisms on yoga, he has detailed. People think it is all, metaphor, but they are true. There are spots in the body which act like buttons. By concentration there, you get those knowledge of what goes on in other people's minds. Certain areas where if you concentrate, you become invisible to others. You are there, but you become invisible to others. They just can't see you. Then there is another kind of concentration where you can be simultaneously in 2 or 3 places. These are not stories. That is, you are in the physical body in one place, Pondicherry. But you can project your subtle physical body in Bombay. And those people who see won't know that it is my subtle physical body. They see me, they say we have seen. Because the subtle physical body has a close correspondence to the physical body. So these are real powers, not that they have a spiritual value, but they show the power of the spirit, the power of consciousness, to produce the desired results in physical matter. The ancients, after describing all these, still they said, it is only Hatha Yoga. It is only the first grade. It can lead you up to this far. Thereafter, you have to pass into Raja Yoga, where you try and get the same control over life force as you have got here on matter. Prana. So there, pranayam, chitta shuddhi, dhyana, samadhi, that is the technique. And these things prepare the way for the trimarga, the way of knowledge, the way of devotion, the way of works, for culturing the whole being. So each leads to the others, No yoga is exclusive. It is a later development of Indian civilization in its decadence that there was one-sided development. And the Tantra came to restore this sense of wholeness by taking up the whole being through its central energy in its ascent and calling down the divine power to come into the human body and establishing connection between the individual and the universe, looking upon the whole world as a proper, legitimate scheme for the enjoyment of God through each individual. In synthesizing the soul and nature, Sri Aurobindo takes up these past efforts at synthesis of the Veda, of the Gita, of the Tantra, and he gives his own synthesis of science and spirituality, of East and West, of matter and spirit. And all of them, they find their justification, confluence, harmonization in man. So man is the most important term of reference. It is through him that the manifestation is to take place. Through him nature turns upon herself, turns towards God. And the concept of man in Sri Aurobindo's philosophy raises him to its highest value, more than any philosopher has done. Life divine and human cycle.